Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. My name is Jay, and today we're going to be previewing all matches coming up this weekend in Round 9 of the 2025 AFL season. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome on back, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. We've got another banger episode coming your way today, and it's episode 29 of season 2025. Today, we're going to be previewing all 9 matches coming your way for round 9 this weekend. Flying through the season, as we always do, we'll be previewing every match. We'll have a look at who we think is going to win. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We do 2 episodes every single week, going live on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Second episode of the week is always the review episode, or the first episode of the week, depending which way you look at it, but that's on Monday every week. And then we have this preview episode that goes live every Thursday morning. So make sure you come back if you enjoy the content. We're going to try and find you 9 winners today. So we'll see how we go with that. Haven't been in the best tipping form. Last week was okay, but hopefully this is the week that we smash it. It's a tough weekend of matches, so it will be a difficult one, but let's see how we go. Footy this weekend is kicking off on Thursday night. Fremantle Collingwood at Optus Stadium. Big game for both teams, both coming off a loss last week. Certainly completely different losses, to be fair. Fremantle looked absolutely atrocious when they got smacked by St Kilda on Friday night. Whereas Collingwood Saturday night in an absolute classic, one of the games of the year so far, against Geelong, went down by 3 points. So 2 different teams, 2 different areas at the moment. We'll start, I guess, with the news of the game, I guess. Fremantle are going in as favourites. It'd be interesting to see if that would still the case if Collingwood were playing all their big names. They've made 4 changes this week. Fremantle have made 3 changes as well, to be honest. But a lot of people may be swaying towards Fremantle because Collingwood resting a couple players. I wouldn't read too much into it. I wouldn't be too stressed about it. It is what it is. I think it was always kind of the plan for Collingwood to be resting some of their more senior players this week due to 5-day break into a trip across the country. It just kind of makes sense for them, I think. So Fremantle have Josh Draper. Hayden Young is a big out. He only came in for a couple games before he's injured again. And Quinton Narkle is also out. Coming into the lineup is Patrick Voss, Neil Erasmus, and Cooper Simpson. Meanwhile, on the Collingwood side of the fence, they have 4 big outs. Maynard is out with a slight injury, I think. Nothing too serious. Geordie DeGoey is going to be in and out of the team most of the season, I reckon. They'll be trying to manage him as much as they can because I don't think his body's at full fitness. Brody Mychek has a slight injury, but should be back for round 10. And Scotty Pendlebury just rested. In comes 2 premiership players in Jeremy Howe and Oleg Markov. So it's not bad replacements there. I mean, obviously Jeremy Howe's clearly in their best 22. And then Oleg, this will be his first game of the season. Also coming in, Ed Allen, who's had a couple little dips but never got a full game yet. A real crack at it this season. And Lockie Sullivan, likewise, has been in and out of the team a couple times this year. Probably his role is a fringe player, a backup player, but when he gets his chance, if he takes it, that will be huge for them. It would be interesting to see where the markets would be if Collingwood, if that's the only reason in Fremantle are going in as favourites. Because, I mean, from what we've seen this year, I would say Collingwood are the better team out of the 2. Obviously, it is at Optus Stadium, though. Fremantle do play that ground pretty well. They have lost there this year, though, so it's an interesting one. Last year, they met over there at Optus Stadium, and it was a draw. Collingwood were about 4 goals up with half a quarter to go. And Fremantle just came back and nearly got the win, but it ended up with a draw. You got to go back to 2021 for the last time Fremantle beat Collingwood. Most of those have been in Melbourne, though. As I said, both teams coming off a loss. Collingwood did win the 6 games before that, though, whereas Fremantle have gone win-loss the last 4 weeks and sit 4-4 at 9th on the ladder, whereas Collingwood are still second on the ladder, even with the loss last week. What else is there to say about this game is, I don't know, it should be a good game. Obviously, Fremantle's midfield did not perform last week. Both Brayshaw and Caleb Sarong played almost their worst games of the last 2 years, just about. Probably their worst combined game. They just struggled and they got smacked in clearances. They just didn't really put up a fight. The only players on the ground that actually performed were backline players because they were just under the pump the whole night. So they'll be looking for a much improved performance from their midfield this week. Will they get it? Will they show it? I would imagine so. I think they just have to come out with their best. The forward line really struggled last week. Obviously, Josh Tracy has been good this year. He's kicked 20 goals, but he needs to get back into form here. Meanwhile, on the Collingwood side of the fence, they've still got a really talented line. You look across their whole field. They've got pretty much a full-strength back line here. They've got a pretty solid midfield, in all honesty. It's probably just missing Pendlebury, in all honesty. I know Tom Mitchell's also not in there yet, but we will see him at some stage. And then in the forward line, they're still really strong. I know Degoe's also missing, but I think he's probably going to be more of a forward that rotates through midfield this season. A look at the stats across the board. Collingwood pretty much win most areas of this game. Fremantle losing clearances this year, mainly because of last week's absolute schmozzle. They were the best clearance team in the competition last year. So far, they certainly are not this year. Both teams tackled pretty similarly in terms of numbers. It's not a massive difference across the board, but it just seems that Collingwood do kind of lead the way in most of the key stats. Contested football, inside 50s, disposals. Fremantle just lacking some polish, I think, this season so far. It's still a long way to go in the year. They do have 4 wins, 4 losses. So it's not the end of the world. They still have, I can't even work it out in my head, but a lot of games left, 15-odd games. They win 9 or 10 of them. They should be enough to play finals, and you just never know. But based on what we saw last week, we certainly need to see an improvement because it was a disaster for them last week. But the week before, they were really good against Adelaide over there in Perth. So we've got to remember that as well when we're thinking about this match. As always, we'll do our tips at the end of the episode. So let's jump into game number 2 of the weekend. And this will be St Kilda Carlton at Marvel Stadium on Friday night. This is an interesting game, to say the least. Carlton going in reasonable favourites in this one, even though they got smashed last week over in Adelaide. Meanwhile, St Kilda, who did the punishing work on Fremantle last Friday night at Marvel Stadium, come back for another Marvel Stadium game here and aren't going to be favourites, which is an interesting one. If we have a look at some interesting stuff here, they met, obviously, I don't know if everyone will remember, but most people might remember that they met last year in round 24, and St Kilda got the 2-point win thanks to a Jack Higgins goal late, which almost knocked Carlton out of the finals until Fremantle lost to Port Adelaide later on. But yeah, St Kilda got them last year. That was at Marvel Stadium in round 24. The year before they met in round 21, Carlton got the job done by 19 points. And then in early in 2023, in round 6, St Kilda got the 22-point win. So it's not a bad record that St Kilda actually have against Carlton. And if you go across the last 10 matches, it's actually 7-3 in St Kilda's favour. This game's at Marvel Stadium, where St Kilda do play their best football. Carlton aren't bad at Marvel Stadium, but they do occasionally slip up there. Obviously, they lost to St Kilda late last year. I think they lost a couple other games there against some interstate teams over the last couple of years as well. So there's just a few things that suggest that maybe St Kilda should be going into this one as favourites. I'm not fully convinced, but based on what we saw last weekend, it's very hard to write St Kilda off in this game. Likewise, it's very hard to tip Carlton based on what we saw them do last weekend. So that's basically where we sit going into this game. What do we make of it? Who knows? The history tells you that it should be pretty close to each other. St Kilda actually sit higher on the ladder so far this year than Carlton. They're 4-4, sitting 10th on the ladder, whereas Carlton are 3 wins and 5 losses, sitting 13th on the ladder. They did get those 3 wins in a row, but you kind of got to rule out 2 of them. One was West Coast, one was North Melbourne. They're not high-quality wins. Whereas I feel like St Kilda's wins, certainly like last week, they dominated a team in Fremantle, and then their previous win was Port Adelaide in Adelaide, which I know Port Adelaide are very hit and miss so far this year, but still, that's a really good result in my eyes. Yeah, they had 2 really bad weeks in a row, St Kilda. One against Bulldogs and then one against Brisbane. But they showed that they can still play football on the weekend. So I don't know what I think, to be honest, with this game. This is probably almost the hardest, I think, on paper heading into this week. Both teams' offense not going particularly great, in all honesty. Carlton's defense is potentially what will win them this game. I think their defense is going slightly better than St Kilda's so far from what we've seen. Carlton are a team that dominate inside 50s. They've always dominated contested football. St Kilda's contested football this year has been pretty solid as well. Not quite to the level of Carlton, but still pretty solid. Both teams do pretty well in the clearance game, so that will be interesting to see how that plays out. I just don't know who wins on paper. I think both teams have the ability to attack and score quite heavily, but also have the ability to concede a lot of goals. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this game. I know I haven't steered anyone towards a winner just yet. And I don't know if we'll be able to, because it's going to be a tough game. Maybe you go the way of Carlton because just on the Paddy Cripps factor, even though he's probably been their 3rd best player this year so far. He was their best last week, there's no doubt about that. But in my rating system, the All Aussie Rules rating system, if you don't know what that is, I did a video just on my YouTube channel a couple of days ago, which is ranking the best players so far this year. And for Carlton, George Hewitt is number 1, Tom De Koning is number 2, and Paddy Cripps is number 3. George Hewitt's been outstanding this year, there's no doubt about it. They probably need a little bit more from Sam Walsh. Paddy Cripps was at his best last week, but he did have very little support. Their backline's going well. Silvani's playing really good football. Wiedering's playing good football as well. Their forward line's not at their best. Charlie Curnow's just got 15 goals from 7 games, which by no means is terrible. It's just over 2 goals a game. But by the standards of Charlie Curnow, it's not fantastic and probably needs a slight increase. So make of that what you will. Harry Mackay, he's played 4 games and only managed 4 goals. So he's another one that's really struggling in that forward line so far. That's about the logic on that side of the fence that I have. Jack Higgins has been outstanding as a small forward. Very underrated so far this year. I don't think he rated too high in my rankings for general forwards. I can't remember exactly where he is, but he does have 21 goals so far this year in 8 games, which is a fantastic return and has him still in contention for Coleman medal. Long way to go. Doubtful that he'll stay in that contention, but a really outstanding start to his season. Mitch Owens, he's kicked 14 from 7, so he's going okay as well. Cooper Sharman showed a really good game last week as well. My head is saying Carlton, in all honesty, but there's just something that's telling me that you can't write St Kilda off in this one. So my tips will be at the end of the episode. We will also have my ELO rating system win percentages for each team as well. We'll go through that at the end as well. But it's a tough game, let me tell you that. It's a tough game. Next up, we move to Saturday football. It's going to be led off with Melbourne Hawthorn at the MCG. And this is a matchup where Melbourne have certainly had the wood over Hawthorn in recent years. You got to go all the way back to round 4, 2018 for the last time Hawthorn have beaten Melbourne. There was one draw between these two teams back in 2021, but other than that, it's all one-way traffic. Granted, Melbourne have been a pretty highly finishing team in the last 5-6 years, whereas outside of last year, Hawthorn have not been. And the only time these two teams met last year was pretty early in the season, round 2, when Melbourne were flying and Hawthorn had not hit their straps yet. But they met in round 2, and that was like a massive 50-something point win, 55-point win to Melbourne. Back in 2023, they met twice, and Melbourne won reasonably comfortably both times, 27 and 54 were the margins in those two. No doubt about it, Hawthorn is going to be going in as favourites in this, and quite heavy favourites. If there was ever an upset, maybe this is it. I don't see it realistically happening, but maybe this is it. We'll see. Obviously, Melbourne have finally turned their season around. Granted, I'm not sure about some of the opponents that they've beat. But they started really poor, losing their first 5. They've since then won their next 3, beating Fremantle in Melbourne, followed by Richmond in Melbourne, and then going over to the West last week and taking care of West Coast by 32 points. So 2 of those are bottom 3 or 4 teams. So not outstanding results, but at the same time, they've certainly looked a lot better than they did across the first 5 weeks of the season. Meanwhile, Hawthorn's side of the fence, they're flying. There's absolutely no concerns about them. Granted, their last couple of weeks have perhaps been easier games. Up until that point, they were still going pretty well. Like, they won their first 4 games before losing a bad one against Port Adelaide, but we forgive that one. And then a close one against Geelong. Certainly not a bad result before beating West Coast and Richmond. So both of these two teams have beat West Coast and Richmond over the last fortnight, obviously alternating weeks. Hawthorn did it probably more convincingly across the 2 weeks than Melbourne, but at the same time, a win's a win. A win is a win. The record heavily over on Melbourne's side, but it's just an all-round ground, all around the ground dominance that Hawthorn are putting together at the moment. They're using the ball better. They're getting the ball better. They're really good at converting their chances. They're doing most things really well. Whereas Melbourne across the season have kind of struggled. That's certainly looked a lot better over the last few weeks, mainly because of the fact that Max Gawn has just taken his game back up to the levels that we've seen him do the last few years. He's been outstanding, especially the last 2 weeks. Petrarca has also been really good the last 2 weeks. So I think this game is very reliant on probably those two and Kozzy Pickett performing well, because they're the 3 big names that have been really good for them this year. Also, side note, Cade Chandler's been really good for them as well, I think, in terms of probably underrated in my eyes. He does a lot of work and has been very solid so far this year. Meanwhile, Hawthorn, things are going great for them. They've got no issues. Gunston's kicked 20 goals in 6 matches, which is an outstanding return for a 33-year-old key forward. Cho is playing his role most weeks. He's had a couple down games, but he's still got 15 goals in his 8 matches. Nick Watson's going solid enough. He's got 12 in 8 games. The one forward line player that perhaps is a bit down at the moment is Dylan Moore. He hasn't been outstanding this season yet. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him bounce back into form over the next couple of weeks. Jai Newcomb's been outstanding this year. He's taken his game to another level. He's been really good. Lloyd Meek in the ruck. I think he's the 5th or 6th best ruckman in the competition so far. He's been solid. It's just an all-around-the-ground domination by Hawthorn most weeks, and it's hard to see a world where Melbourne win, even with that record that they have over the Hawks over the last 6 to 10 years. That's that game. I don't think there's too much else to say. It should be one-way traffic, but it would not blow my mind if Melbourne won this game. I don't think they will, but it wouldn't blow my mind. We move on to the next game, and it's Essendon Sydney at Marvel Stadium. This will be on Saturday evening. This is the 4:15 start game, and Sydney are going to be starting favourites, even though they're further down on the ladder, and it is in Melbourne. Interesting, but maybe not. Because they did play well last weekend. But Essendon have been good over the last month, I think, in my eyes at least. 11th on the ladder, Essendon, 4 wins, 3 losses. Obviously played one less game than everyone else but Gold Coast. Sydney, 3 wins, 5 losses, sit 14th on the ladder. They've only managed 2 wins over the last 5 weeks, and one of them was against North Melbourne. Was here in Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, though, so that is a positive. Bombers have won 4 of their last 5, and a couple of them have been okay. Granted, Melbourne, West Coast and North Melbourne, all lower ranked teams so far this season. The win against Port Adelaide was good enough, and I mean, they weren't disgraced against Collingwood on Anzac Day. They played an okay game, lost by 41 points, but they were certainly in that game, especially early in the third quarter. They were hit the front. Meanwhile, Sydney, things have been very strange for them this season. They've managed just 3 wins so far. One of them, their first one against Fremantle, but they've lost a few games that perhaps they shouldn't have. They had a tight one against Brisbane. They only lost by 20-odd points against Hawthorn in opening round. They were certainly a better team than a 20-point loser that day. 8-point loser to Port Adelaide 2 weeks ago. Got reasonably comfortably beaten by Gold Coast in the end 2 weeks ago after leading that game at certain points. But they bounced back with a really good win last week against GWS. So they've just given us that slight little look at what they can do. Chad Warner was outstanding last week. Isaac Heaney's probably slightly below his best at the moment so far this year. Certainly down on what he was producing this time last year. Errol Goulden's still getting closer to coming back, but he's not back yet. So they're still not at their best, but I think we'll see, hopefully for their sakes, a much better performance over the next few weeks than what we've seen up until last week for them. Meanwhile, Essendon, they're getting carried by their best players. There's no doubt about it. Their top players are playing outstanding football. I just don't think they have the depth at the moment to compete on that regular level. Zach Merritt is outstanding this season. I mean, he's been outstanding for years, but this season he's played 2 absolute rippers. He single-handedly held Essendon in that game last week against North Melbourne. If he wasn't out there, they lose that one. There's no doubt about it. His final quarter was outstanding. Chuck in Jai Caldwell's been good. Sam Durham's certainly shown some good signs. They're obviously missing 2 ruckmen in Draper and Nick Bryan, but Goldstein, I mean, he's probably not up to the other 2 level anymore, but he's still serviceable in that ruck position. They don't have the depth. That's their main issue, but sometimes that doesn't matter. You look at a Hawthorn last year, I don't think they had the depth of talent or even the stars that Essendon have this year. But they just got some confidence. They found a game style and they ran with it. And they turned it into a season where they made finals. I'm not saying Essendon will do that this year. I'm certainly not saying that. But don't be surprised by things like that happening, because in the modern game, the teams are so close together in ability a lot of it comes down to luck, but also conversion and game plan. Just being well versed in what you need to do as a team is crucial in team success in the end, in my opinion. So don't be surprised if Essendon win this game. That gives them a little bit of confidence, and you just never know what you're going to see from them going forward with confidence, because they've already got an okay record. And then if they go in, beat Sydney here, the next week is against the Bulldogs, and then they got Richmond. So there's at least one winnable game there. There's some tough games coming up after that: Brisbane, Carlton, Geelong, Fremantle into the bye. But you just never know. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for them to play finals, but you just never know. If they can get some confidence, maybe, just maybe. Yeah, so that's probably all we need to do to talk about that game. It's surely Sydney's to lose, but at the same time, Essendon are not a very good football team, but they've been competing over the last 5 weeks and competing quite well. So I wouldn't rule them out, is what I'm trying to tell you. Next up, we head to Darwin for Saturday night football, and this is one. If you watched the 2 games that Gold Coast played in Darwin last year, there is not a chance you would be backing against them here. Bulldogs are currently going into this as favourites, only slight favourites, but favourites nonetheless. But Gold Coast absolutely dismantled 2 teams up there last year. Granted, one of them was North Melbourne, who didn't win that many games for the year. But their win against Geelong last year up there was absolutely outstanding. It was their best performance of the year, in my opinion. It was a fantastic performance from them. So I don't know how Bulldogs are favourites in this. I know Bulldogs are playing very good football at the moment. This Gold Coast Suns team, they're no slouches, and they're in form. They're going to a ground that they've played really good football at, and yeah, it's just an interesting one, I think. So Gold Coast are 4th on the ladder, even though they've played 1 less game than most other teams. They're 5 wins, 2 losses. On the other side of the fence, the Bulldogs are 5 wins, 3 losses, 6th on the ladder. Slightly different ways to get there this season so far. Obviously, Gold Coast were flying early. That loss to Richmond looked really bad, but they followed it up with a good win against Sydney. Good come-from-behind victory against Sydney. And then losing to Brisbane at the Gabba last week. I mean, you don't lose any kudos, I guess, for losing to Brisbane. They're a premiership team for a reason. They're a very, very good outfit, and especially up on the Gabba. So that just... It's not as bad as the last 3 weeks looks, is basically the long and the short of it. Whereas the Bulldogs probably is as good as the last 3 weeks have looked. They were absolutely dominant against St Kilda 3 weeks ago. They followed it up with a really good performance against GWS, who, granted, they do have a pretty solid record against GWS over the recent years, but still a good performance there. And then they absolutely decimated Port Adelaide on the weekend by 90 points. This is tougher than that. This is probably, I think, the toughest of those 4 games. So take of that what you will, but it's just the way I see it. Bulldogs do have a good record against Gold Coast overall, 8-2 over the last 10 matches. The 2 wins for Gold Coast, round 11 2023 and round 3 2019. They met last year early on in the season, and the Doggies absolutely smashed them. They blew them away in the first quarter, and they just kept running away with it throughout the game. This Bulldogs midfield is impossible to stop, basically. They have that many good players in their midfield at the moment that if you stop one, you've got to try and figure out how to stop the rest of them, basically. If it's not Ed Richards, it's Bontempelli. If it's not him, it's Libba. If it's not him, it's Kennedy. If it's not him, it's Fraser. Treloar's back as well now. So they just have so much depth of talent in that midfield line. Even with the loss of Sam Darcy out of their forward line, They just get so much of the ball going forward that they can really still punish you in any way they like, really. Early season, Darcy was their relief player, I guess, that would take a big contested mark and get them out of trouble, whereas now they've got that many ball winners, now that Bont's back and Treloar's back, that they don't have that stress anymore. So it is worrying to think what this team will be later in the year when Sam Darcy is back. However, other side of the fence, Gold Coast are going all right. They're certainly going all right. 24 goals from Ben King so far this year, 14 for Long. Jed Walters put together 10. Their midfield's going pretty well. It's not going outstanding, but they're doing their job. Anderson, Miller, Rao. Bailey Humphries had a couple great games. As I just mentioned Ben Long before, he's one of the highest rated smaller forwards in the game so far this year. They got some good run off their back line through Rioli. John Noble's been really good this year so far. They just don't have that many chinks. I don't think they have as good a midfield as the Bulldogs, in all honesty. But I think their forward line works better than the Bulldogs currently. Whether that would be the case if Sam Darcy was out there, probably not. But it's a different game when you go to Darwin than anywhere else, especially that the Bulldogs play. Gold Coast do kind of get some games that are similar conditions to a Darwin game, but the Bulldogs don't get many because it's a lot slipperier. It's fast, and Gold Coast play that game really well over the last couple of years. So I'd be very surprised to see them not play it well again. I've still got memories of what they did to Geelong last year, so I'm just thinking about that when I'm thinking this game, and because of that, I think I am going to go with the Gold Coast Suns in this one. Next up, we go to the game at the same time. Two cracking games on against each other. It's the showdown, Port Adelaide, Adelaide Oval on Saturday night. This will be a cracker. It doesn't matter where these two teams are on the ladder. Either one of them could win. Adelaide have won 3 of the last 4. The only one they haven't was round 23 last year. So Port Adelaide, even though they have the better recent record overall in AFL than Adelaide, Adelaide still have a decent record against them in the showdown over the last couple of years. Does that mean much here? Don't know. Adelaide's certainly the better team so far this year. Their attack is absolutely outstanding. Their midfield's really good. Little bit of a concern here and there about their defence, at least from where I'm sitting. I don't know if other people have the same concerns, but I think that at times they might have a little bit of an issue there, but they're going to go into this favourites, and they should too, because they're playing some incredibly good football. They won the first showdown last year by 30 points when up until that point they looked atrocious, but you just know both teams are going to come out absolutely firing in this one. Port Adelaide sitting 12th on the ladder, 4 wins, 4 losses. Adelaide 5th on the ladder, 5 wins, 3 losses. If you just take the last 5 weeks, Port Adelaide have actually got a better record than Adelaide, which is funny. 3 wins, 2 losses against 2 wins, 3 losses. But everyone will remember what we saw from the Port Adelaide Football Club last weekend. They lost by 90 points to the Bulldogs. It was a terrible performance. If you go back to a few weeks ago, they had that really good game against Hawthorn and followed that up with a really good win against Sydney. Granted, Sydney probably were the better team on that day. And then they only just snuck over the line over North Melbourne before obviously getting smacked by the Bulldogs. Whereas Adelaide have been a little bit hit and miss as well, but in a different kind of way. Gather round, they lost to Geelong after being 7 goals up or close enough to 7 goals up early in that game. They then had a low-scoring affair against GWS in the rain where they got over them by 18 points. Went over to Perth, weren't great, but also weren't terrible against Fremantle, but just Fremantle were better than them on the day. And then last week they were outstanding against Carlton, where they absolutely tore them apart. I could see a world where Port Adelaide win this, but there is not a chance I would be tipping them. I just don't see how this Port Adelaide team is going to stop the Adelaide forward line. They have too many weapons that can damage you, really. Too many weapons up there. They've got 3 key forwards that are all playing really good. Thilthorpe's got 20 goals already this year. Darcy Fogarty has 18 goals from 7 games. And Taylor Walker also has 17. And then you chuck in small forwards. Ben Keys has been really good. Richelieu's starting to put together some good games. Neil Bullen pops up. And then your midfielders also getting goals. Rankin's got 10 goals for the season. Jordan Dawson has 5. So they just have a lot of options going forward in terms of damaging you, and I just don't see a world where Port Adelaide's defence can stop all of these players. Port Adelaide's main asset is their midfield, and Adelaide's midfield is also very good. So that's how I see it. Whether that's how this plays out or not, I guess we'll see come the weekend. But as it is, there's not a world where I'm not tipping Adelaide in this one. It doesn't mean I will be right, but I will definitely be tipping Adelaide. We now move into Sunday football. And we start with... We've gone from a couple good games to maybe an absolute stinker. 16th on the ladder v 18th on the ladder. It's Richmond West Coast at the MCG. Sunday afternoon football. Tune into this. She'll be a cracker. Yeah, what to say about it? Richmond's form certainly better than West Coast. Make of that what you will. 2 wins, 6 losses for Richmond. 0 wins, 8 losses for West Coast. Both Richmond's wins have kind of been upset, or definitely have been upsets. Beat Carlton and Gold Coast. Most of the other games haven't really looked like much of a chance of winning, in all honesty. Whereas West Coast have looked pretty terrible most weeks, except for they were okay against Brisbane in about round 2 or 3. They nearly beat the Bombers a couple weeks back. At times early in the game they looked okay against Melbourne, but the rest of the season they have not looked great. It's hard to see a world where they're going to be competitive too many times. But this is against Richmond. If they're going to get a win, this is their chance, really. Outside of playing Richmond and North Melbourne over in the West, this is about as good a chance as they're going to get. They've looked really poor this year, but you've got to give them a chance. They met just once last year, and the Eagles won it by 39 points. Before that, it was all Richmond dominating the matchup. They've won 7 of their last 10 against the Eagles. Funnily enough, across the board, just about in every stat category, they have been better than West Coast this year. They get more of the football. They look after the football better. I mean, their numbers are terrible. They're just not as terrible as West Coast. Attacking-wise, both teams are pretty similarly matched up. I think it's the Richmond defence that maybe gives them the edge in this. They do have a stronger defence line, do the Tigers. I think we'll see that in effect this weekend. Whether that plays out or not, I don't know. But that's how I think they probably win this game. Between Bolter, Floston, and a couple of others back there, Ben Miller's been really good. I think they've just got the better back line. West Coast probably do have the better forward line as currently stands, but Waterman hasn't taken off as he did last year yet. He's got 11 goals from his 5 games. Their midfield's just struggling a little bit. And yeah, I just don't know what to make of what we've seen from West Coast this year. Couldn't back them. It's a game that on paper, start of season, you would have been penciling West Coast in as favourites here and a really good chance. But from what we've seen so far, they're 0-8, and in all honesty, they don't even look like beating teams. I said this last year about them at one point, and then they turned it around and started to play a lot better. So I hope for West Coast's sake we start to see that from this week onwards, but I just have no faith in it at all. So we have 2 more games for the weekend. Sunday afternoon, down at the Cattery, we're going to have Geelong GWS, and this is a big game for both teams. 7th v 8th on the ladder. Cats will go in favourites, quite heavy favourites, obvious reason. It's their home game. They're also won 4 of their last 5, with their only loss going to Carlton 2 weeks ago. 5-3 for the season. After an interesting start to their year, they've really started to knuckle down and put in some good, consistent performances, whereas GWS started fantastically. We're 4-1 3 weeks ago. They've since then lost 3 in a row. Poor performance against Adelaide in the wet at Adelaide Oval. Then got beaten in Canberra by the Doggies by 40-odd points. And then last week against Sydney, slow out of the blocks and then just couldn't peg them back, basically. Lost by about 14 points to Sydney. History of this matchup is pretty even. 4 wins for Geelong, 5 for GWS in the last 9. The one before that was a draw in 2017. The last 2 times they've met was round 11 of the last 2 years. Both times have been won by GWS. I think GWS are a team that get a lot of the football. It could be a game style that Geelong don't handle too well, in all honesty. GWS's game style is a lot different than Collingwood's, that we saw Geelong beat last week. So in that sense, maybe they might have some trouble with this GWS team, but Geelong, you'd just have to think, would win this based on what we've seen from them over the last month. Their midfield's going well. Their forward line's getting the job done. There's no absolute star performances. I know Dangerfield was outstanding the other day. Bailey Smith's probably been their most consistent player. But they just don't have that out-and-out star week in, week out that a lot of other teams have. But they just play good team football, in all honesty. Whereas GWS do have the stars week in, week out. But they just aren't doing enough, certainly over the last few weeks, to really make that use of that. Like Jesse Hogan's been good. He's got 18 goals in 5 games. Toby Green's been solid. He's got 16 in 8, but they don't have any other consistent goal kickers in their lineup. Their best players probably this year is a running half back in Lockie Ash. He's been absolutely outstanding. But their midfield's probably slightly down. Finn Callahan's played a couple good games, but overall consistency maybe not there. Tom Green, probably similar story. So I just don't know what to make of this GWS team at the moment. They will turn it around. It's a similar spot to what they were in about round 15 last year, where they were just teetering towards the bottom of the 8 and not playing the best football, but they turned it around and really knuckled down late in the season and showed why they are one of the better teams. So, in all honesty, we probably have that happen again here, but this is probably not the easiest one for that to start. So, I think Geelong have to be where we're looking to go with our tips this week. Moving on to the final game of the round, and it's going to be North Melbourne, Brisbane. This will be down in Tassie at Ninja Stadium. Sunday evening game, kick-off at about 4:45. Not the best way to finish your round with a North Melbourne-Brisbane game down in cold Hobart, but we'll see how it goes, I guess. 17th on the ladder, North Melbourne, 1 win, 7 losses this year. And that 1 win seems like it was forever ago when they smacked the Demons all over the park in the second half. Whereas Brisbane Lions are top of the ladder now, 7 wins, 1 loss. Their 1 loss coming to Collingwood 3 weeks ago, which was off a 5-day break, so complete forgive that one. Everything just points to this being a Sunday night or Sunday afternoon Brisbane masterclass. It's hard to see a world where it's not, based on what we've seen from North Melbourne recently. They had an okay second half against Essendon last week, but overall they weren't fantastic. They were arguably really good against Port Adelaide, only lost by 9 points after being 5 goals down against them 2 weeks ago. But then before that it was quite horrible. 80-point losers to Carlton, 60-odd point losers to Gold Coast, granted. They were winning in the third quarter. and 70-odd point losers to Sydney. So their last 5 weeks certainly reads very interestingly. Maybe they haven't been going as bad as the win-loss tally says, but I'm just not convinced with them. And meanwhile, Brisbane, I mean, they're flying. They're not putting a foot wrong at the moment. They beat Gold Coast. They went down to Melbourne and beat St Kilda and Bulldogs 4 weeks ago. And Richmond, Bulldogs, was Gather Round in Adelaide. But the week before was Richmond in Melbourne. So overall, Brisbane, they're doing what they do. Dominating the field position, getting the ball forward, dominating clearances, controlling the football, and just doing what they also do, not scoring great when they go forward. But I would expect that to probably change against this North Melbourne team, because North Melbourne defence just, I don't think it's fantastic. I mean, they haven't conceded too badly certainly last week they only conceded 65, but the 4 weeks before that they went 97 against Port Adelaide, 153 against Carlton, 141 against Gold Coast, and 117 against Sydney, which really makes you worried about what kind of score they will concede against this Brisbane Lions, because Brisbane will get the ball forward plenty. Brisbane have won the last 7 matchups between these two teams, and the last 3 times they've met, they've scored well in excess of 100. 156, 152, 112 the last 3 times. It does fill you with a few concerns, or it at least does for me. Brisbane they have so many options through the midfield, through the wings, through the forward line. They just they don't really have many weaknesses, this Brisbane lineup. Obviously the main concern coming into the year was that second tall forward, or even the main tall forward, I guess, because Joe Danaher retirement meant that Hipwood goes from second key forward to number 1 key forward, and it's moved Logan Morris from third key forward up to second key forward. He's kicked 13 goals from 7 games, so he's been pretty solid. And they're not really playing that third key forward most of the time this year, but it hasn't really mattered. They get the job done. So Sam Day's played a bit down there and barely kicked a goal, but overall, I think they're going fine, and it hasn't been too big of an issue, especially because they get so many goals from so many different options: Zach Bailey, Callum Archie, Charlie Cameron, Cam Rayner, and even their midfielders pop up here and there for goals as well. And their midfielders do play some really good football between them. Brisbane will be massive favourites going into this, and for every reason they should be, because they are going to be clearly the better team out on the park, you would imagine. We'll jump into, so that's all 9 games. Before we continue on, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all of those fun things. We're flying through. We're going to run through now the win percentages based on the ELO rating system. If you're new here, we do a rating system. It starts at every team at 1,500. I don't have the ratings up there. I probably should have put them on the screen. But based on whether you win or lose, you go up or down, whether it's at home or away, how much you lost by, all that sort of stuff, whether the team was better or worse. All those sort of things come into the calculation, spit out a number, then gives us win percentages going into each game. It's not perfect, never will be, no system ever will be perfect, but it gives us just an indication on where teams sit. The rating system's based on like the last few years, multiple years, so it's not just this season, which is why teams like Adelaide still have a low rating. In all honesty, they kept fighting their way towards being good and then lost a couple games. But if they go and beat Port Adelaide this week, they will certainly rise up even further. So Thursday night, Fremantle, Collingwood. Collingwood actually going in as 54% chance of a winner there. St Kilda go in at 56% over Carlton, which is an interesting one. So both of those are going against the favourites of the match. Hawthorn obviously going in heavy favourites there, 72% chance against Melbourne. Sydney 54% against the Bombers, as the market suggests. The Doggies are at 54% over Gold Coast, which is where the market is basically, but I just don't understand that because Gold Coast definitely should be in front, I think. Port Adelaide at 60.8% is definitely against the market there. Richmond at 59%. Who would have thought that we would see that? That is insane. West Coast, what are they doing? Geelong will be 65.3% over GWS, and we'll finish with the biggest favourite, I guess, of the weekend. According to the All Aussie Rules ELO rating system, is Brisbane at 87.6% chance to beat the Kangies on Sunday night. Final thing we're looking at is my tips, which will go against what we just saw with that rating system. Fremantle by 5 over Collingwood. Whether that's how I stick with it, who knows. By the time game starts, I might change my mind 6 times on that one. It's a tough one. Same can be said for Friday night. I'm currently with St Kilda by 12 points. Could switch around though. Hawthorn by 35. I think they should be too good for Melbourne, even though Melbourne have a good record against the Hawks. Sydney by 17. I'm not convinced that this will happen, but maybe, just maybe, we saw the real Sydney stand up last week, and if they come out again like that, I think they beat the Bombers, who have an okay record recently, but they just haven't been convincing in any of those wins. Gold Coast, there's no way I'm tipping against them this weekend. I know Doggies are playing some really good football, but up in Darwin, I have to go Gold Coast. Adelaide, 28 points over Port Adelaide. They're just the better South Australian team right now. There's no doubt about that. And I know that this game throws up some weird matchups. Both teams really want to win it, but I'm sticking with Adelaide there. Richmond by 1. I'm not convinced either way that either team win this, but being in Melbourne, West Coast have been atrocious. We have to stick with the Tiggies, don't we? Geelong down in Geelong by 9 points over GWS. I think it will be a cracking close game that Geelong should win based on what we've seen over the last few weeks. And then we'll finish with Brisbane by 27 over North Melbourne. That could be 107 or it could be 20. I just don't see a world where North Melbourne win it though. That is a wrap on All Aussie Rules podcast episode 29 of season 2025. This was our round 9 preview. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're new here. Also check out the YouTube channel. We post videos every week. The podcast goes up there, but we also post other videos. This week it was a top players of the season so far. We're going to continually do videos like that throughout the rest of the year, so make sure you're there. Hit up the social medias. It's All Aussie Rules everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, we post a lot. TikTok, we post a lot. Go check them all out. I appreciate you for being here. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope I helped you find some winners. Let me know if I did or didn't. And yeah, that's everything I've got for you today. I'm Jay. This was the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. And I'll catch you on the next one.